So without further ado, I would like to welcome on stage Regina Nkencho, who is the board vice president of the Gnome Foundation and a governing member of the board of directors at the Gnome Foundation. Her role involves strengthening, excuse me please. Her role involves strengthening the Gnome project through diversity initiatives and strategic planning. She also serves as a maintainer for the Gnome Africa project. She's the first African to be elected and re-elected to the Gnome Foundation board. You guys, come on. Exactly, keep it coming.
Please, can you continue clapping as they are reading the bio? Thank you. Because it's not easy.
Regina has 11 years of experience working with databases and Linux projects. She holds a master's degree in informatics. She works as a software engineer.
It's like the claps are reducing, oh. Please, can we keep it coming?
Clap, oh, so that when it's your turn, we'll clap for you, at least. She works as a software engineer and serves as the Open Source Program Office Ambassador at IKEA, Sweden. She's the founder of Open Kids Africa, a non-profit organization that utilizes open educational resources to give children in rural communities tech skills. Regina has an interest in promoting diversity within open source communities, and her speaking engagements revolve around topics such as diversity and open source sustainability. She is the host of Open Source Stories with Regina, a platform where she empowers women's contribution to the open source ecosystem through stories of leading women in the open source community. She has been a speaker and participant at conferences like Women in Tech Sweden, Guacadec, Force Backstage, Linux Foundation events, the Linux App Summits, Oscar, and more. In her leisure time, Regina enjoys traveling and exploring new places. I believe that we found our sister. She enjoys what? Wait a minute. You, just wait. Please come. Let me. That's right. You people ask, what's the meaning of that? What's the meaning of that? That's right.
Okay.
We're thrilled and we're honored to actually have you speak to us today.
I'm honored too.
Ladies, are we ready? Ladies, are we ready?
Oscar Fest 2023. Please give it up for Regina.
Thank you.
That's right. Exactly.
Thank you so much. What a warm welcome. I feel flattered though, and thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm going to start by saying that this is a story of a girl about 4 years ago that found a foundation with absolutely no idea about what open source is, absolutely no idea about how to use GitHub, absolutely no idea about how to basically engage with the tech community. So I'm hoping that my story would inspire you and basically help you to see yourself beyond where you are at the moment. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to be talking about overcoming obstacles as a woman contributor to open source. There's no better way to start, right? We're going to start by we all taking a self-reflection. And at the end of my talk, we are going to go back to the self-reflection and begin to answer the answers you're going to have now. So, I want you all to look at your open source experiences. If you don't have an experience, fine. First question I need you to answer is, have you given yourself the opportunity to thrive in the open source community where you are a contributor or maintainer at the moment? It's a yes or no answer. So it means, think about your own personal experiences. Do you think you are doing enough? Do you think you can do more? When you answer that, keep that thought. We will need it at the end of the talk. Secondly, have you given minority groups the opportunity to thrive and make significant impact within the open source? minority groups differs to different projects. In this case, women. Have you been found in a position where you have to help another woman rather, get up there and make impacts within your open source project? Is it even something you consider or you think about? It's a yes or no answer. So if you have your answer, keep that. We are coming back to it. So there are several reasons why people would want to join open source projects. Like I said to you 4 years ago, I had absolutely no idea what open source is. I have been working with Linux, I had worked with databases, Oracle, SQL Server and all, and I'd worked with different distros of Linux. But honestly, I didn't know I was working with open source until 2019. So it means that I decided, like any other person would feel like, that on 2019, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to contribute to something that I've never done before. And open source popped up. What is open source? I realized that every applications that I've been working with within Linux, most of them are open source tools. And the GNOME project stood out because I had been working with the GNOME desktop for quite some time. So what did I want to learn at the time? I was more of a back-end developer. I like to be on my own. I would never stand up anywhere to talk. Even if I was a lecturer at the time, I could just lecture and that's it. So I wanted to learn how to basically work with product marketing within technology. And I also wanted to learn things about outreach, how to organize events, talk to people about technology products. This is what drove me into open source. Luckily, as with anyone that has a goal lined up, you would naturally start finding opportunities in that line because you already have the torch, right? So I got an opportunity to volunteer at the GNOME project. In the GNOME project, we have different areas you can volunteer for, but because I had a focus of what I wanted to learn, I went straight to the engagement channel, which means that engagement is all about product marketing, event creation, and all of that. I also wanted to learn more on what it means to have a collaborative mindset, what it means to basically make a meaningful impact within the technology space, and of course, build my professional network. And I felt like I was indebted to GNOME somehow, because I had used the product for so long, and then finding the community that actually develops this solution was mind-blowing, as I felt like I had to give back my time to the community. But there were issues, and this is why we are here today. Like that excited girl that decided to go into open source and contribute to, outreach within GNOME, I realized that some things were missing. One of the things that we are missing were contributor onboarding. Even if I had met people within the project, the onboarding of newcomers were not very clear. And at this period, I struggled a lot because I really didn't know what to do, where to start from, and how to begin to make my contribution. I also realized that there was absolutely no representation for somebody that looks like me. I was more like in the midst of, bunch of white folks. And so having to basically discuss my pains was a little bit difficult at the time. And then I realized that I had so many things I wanted to do. I had issue with balancing my priorities. Even if I had it down here that I wanted to contribute to open source and I wanted to do things in product marketing, I had other things as well that I had planned. So I was caught between how to basically schedule my time and be available for open source. Remember, I am coming into open source as a volunteer. I wasn't thinking of receiving money. I didn't even know that anything like paid internship was available. And the last thing was, I realized that there were huge problems within collaboration and communication. So what it means is that people within the community are more like comfortable within the spheres of the people that they are known for years. And yes, this young black girl coming into a community of, bunch of white folks, what do you really have to say to us that would make a difference? So yes, I had issues. My first 2 years at the GNOME Foundation was, I would say, one of the worst parts of contributing to open source. I had imposter syndrome because people felt like, made me feel like I don't really have anything I could offer. I mean, open source had long been there for over 40 years in the US. What do you as an African young girl knows? Remember, I don't have the fancy GitHub, what do you call it, accounts where you would see so many things I had done. I just wanted to contribute. I just wanted to be part of product marketing and everything. I also was frustrated a lot. I felt like I wasn't supposed to be here. Let me go give my time to something else. Possibly this is not for me. At some point, isolated myself, and I also struggled with if this is really what I want to do, or this is something that would basically make an impact in my career. Thankfully, it is not a unique situation. There are several documented research that I said that the things that I was going through at the time was not new. For instance, the open source survey for 2017 research says that we have only 3.5% women within the open source project. So it means that the men are within 97%, right? The Linux Foundation recently had a research, and it's saying that we have only 7% of women within the open source community and project. So it means that about 93% falls within men and non-binary individuals. Also, the Linux kernel came with their own research and said that we have about 9% of women. The Apache Software Foundation is talking about 5% of women, and OpenStack is saying 10% of women. Now, when you look at these logistics, you would see that it's normal for me to be frustrated. You would see that it's not abnormal for me to feel like I was not needed within the open source space, because statistics have shown that there are not much women within open source. As a matter of fact, a particular researcher said, and in quotes, "Where are the women in open source?" It means that they're looking for us. Where are we, right? And this became a burden. I felt as though if this is happening within the open source space, then there is a burden. There's something that needs to be done. And so I began to look at what are the other challenges that other women were going through. Are my problems unique? No, it's not unique. Several women were going through things like contribution bias. People feel like if you're not contributing to code, you are not important to open source. Non-technical contributions like documentation, outreach, and marketing were not seen as contributions to open source. People also felt like stereotyping. I spoke to a couple of women, and it's so sad that people feel like, till date, I have a mindset that women cannot be technical enough. We cannot do certain things at a certain level. And also, there are cases of unexplained rejections by project maintainers. They just reject women's contribution and pick up, the male contribution without even looking at what she has done. And there were problems of rudeness, name calling. A particular researcher said she was asked, when did you come into the Python community? What do you really have that you can develop within Python? That's painful, right? There were things about toxic environment. There was outright bullying. There was all sorts of harassment that women were going through within open source. As someone, and I will say this with utmost joy, as someone that is a Nigerian, and my blood is very hot, I felt as though I must do something about this. I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't comfortable with the way I was treated. I wasn't comfortable with the way other women were treated. And I wasn't going to go down just like that. So the first thing I did was to think about my mental health. I had a mental switch. I call it a switch because at the beginning of my contribution, I saw myself as more as a victim of what researchers said and the situation I was facing. So I changed my mindset. I began to think about it like I could actually be a solution to this problem. I could actually begin to do things that will make women to be seen. And so immediately I began to do that, I started seeing opportunities within the GNOME project rather than seeing myself as a failure. This mental shift brought about several projects, including having GNOME within Africa and starting up something in Africa. I also decided that what was wrong with my first approach, which is what I would urge you to look at critically, that it is important that you observe a community before you get involved. The process of observation is where you get to know, does this place look good for me? Can I really make change here? Is this somewhere I want to be? Will my contribution count? Observation can happen within the community Slack channel. You can, even reach out to some of the users of the project that you want to contribute to. The way they respond to you, the way they take on your case, the way you communicate, that will tell you if this is where you want to be or not. And to be honest, no matter how I felt as though this is something that I really wanted to do, I prioritized my mental health. And it's saying that your mental health is invaluable. There is no amount of open source contribution that should get you go crazy. No. Because think about this first. You are giving value back to the community. It is important that you see yourself as a valuable entity within the projects that you are pursuing. So if you see yourself as a valuable entity, why should you go all crazy because you're trying to make a contribution? So once you sense that the contribution you're trying to make is getting you to feel less of yourself, or you feel like your mental health is being challenged, there are over 1,000 open source projects that would appreciate your work, that would get you to the places that you want to be rather than staying stuck where you are. So what made me really stay within the GNOME project and continue there was that most of the backlash I got was not really from the core people. There were contributors like myself. So it meant that the people that really, really mattered within the project, were welcoming, and they really wanted to do something different from what they had done before. So you need to basically weigh your option. Who are the people that are not giving you the opportunity, and what are your options? If your options is telling you that people that are not giving the opportunities are within the leadership of the project, then you should know that there are some issues there as well. And so another thing is, I decided to take on projects that were, to be sustainable. Remember at the beginning of this talk, I talked about what I really wanted to learn was product marketing and outreach. So for me, I knew that I would need that at some point in my career. So it was very direct that I wanted to do something within product marketing and outreach. Because of this, I didn't feel any sort of more like stress on my choices. So it's important that you know basically what you really want to contribute to. For some people, they get paid for open source, right? But if you're going to be doing it as a volunteer work, you really need to know why you're doing it, what skills you want to learn. That would be more like a motivating factor to you to continue in that project. Yes, and the part that is really important is it's important that women begin to look into taking on leadership roles. So the part of taking on leadership roles, I will just share a bit of my story. When I came into the GNOME project about 2019, I began to contribute to things that had to do with engagement, outreach, and events organization. And there were calls for board members, new board members, that particular year. I think that was 2020. I felt that I had done something different. One, I had brought GNOME into the African space that wasn't there before. Two, several women had begun to contribute to open source just by seeing my name. So I felt like I had done something enough to apply for the board. So I took on the challenge and I applied. Now, there were two things on my mind. It's possible that the GNOME members don't even know who I am. Because at some point, open source members are actually there, but it seems as though they are not there. So they are watching what is going on within the community. They might not really be contributing, but the members are there. So I had fears like any other person would, but I went ahead and applied for the board application. And luckily, I was selected on the board. Now, these type of things wouldn't come without a challenge. My first acceptance into the board, I would say there was some sort of even chaos on Twitter. Because some people within the white folks were like, who is she to be on the board of directors? What exactly has she done? And the others were like, we are so happy to have you on the board. We want to see what you have to share. So within the open source space, there are these different kind of people, right? Those that feels like you know what you're doing and have seen your impact. And the other part that feels like we cannot take open source GNOME to Africa. What do they really have to, what does she really have to offer? But it doesn't really matter. You have been voted for. You are supposed to do the work you have been voted for. So I spent 2 years at the GNOME board, taking on research, presenting to the board reasons why we need to be more diverse. Was it an easy thing for me to do? No. It means that most times I have to go back as much as I can. But I knew that there was going to be something that was going to be bettered from that. And in the next term of the board, I was re-elected again to stand on the board. The thing here is, we really do not know the journey of being a leader until you begin that journey. Now, which is something that I feel like it's not really within the open source space and not mostly encouraged, is connecting with other women, building relationship of women within open source. Our stories, as you can see from the statistics I have shown, are very unique. It means that many women are going through a whole lot of things in the hands of the other gender as regards to how they see us. You can only thrive better if you're connected to women within open source. And of course, I'm here, I'm talking to you. We need to keep talking about this. There's a problem in the open source space. We have to do better. Women are going through a lot, and it's in our hands to make things better. I would call this part a part where many people ignore, and it's not just about gender. It's understanding the code of conduct that your community has. What does it mean to have a code of conduct? These are policies that are supposed to protect you and guide you within the community. So if you are being harassed or something, or you are being spoken to in a way that is not right or just, you should be able to use the code of conduct to approach the community of the project that you are working on. So, as you would think that this is just a women talk, it is not. I said earlier, we all have a role to play. And so what can open source projects do to create an enabling environment for women to thrive? One of the things is that open source projects should be conscious about building community. Communities within your project that target women contributors within your project. Give them a space to discuss what they are going through. Give them a space to tell you how they are feeling. Also, open source projects should have programs like mentorship and sponsor programs. I would use the word, put your money where your money can be valued. Sponsor programs that has to do with women in open source. Collaborate with other projects. There are so many projects out there that are looking for ways to, collaborate with your project and have discussions around diversity and things about inequality within the open source space. We also need a lot of outreach and education, like events like this. Have speakers speak about these issues because they are real, they are within us, and things are happening daily within the open source project. And also, if you can, please have awards and recognition for women maintainers or women contributors. And also, create a clear report mechanism. Normally, we would see things here like code of conduct, but I chose to make it reporting and response mechanism because people do not know how to report the issues that are going through within the community. Make it a point of duty to post regularly about how people can actually report the things that they are going through anonymously, and you will take that, of course, seriously. Now goes to project maintenance. Project maintainers, you also have a role to play. I just took out 4 things that I think that project maintainers can do here. One of it is provide honest and constructive feedback. Look, the thing is, any woman coming into your project already knows that there are not many of them in open source. Don't make it difficult. Don't create a more problem for the woman, right? Try to give her a feedback of what you think it is. And then be mindful of biases. We've had cases where people accept PRs from those that they know or those that they've met at conferences. That's totally unfair. An average woman might not even know anything about these conferences. And maybe through the word of mouth, like we're having a conversation today, gets into open source, and you would reject his or her contribution just because you don't have a one-on-one communication. That's bias and that's unfair. Respond promptly. More like create documentation around how your response time within your project is so that there will be no sort of conflicts and all of that. And also offer your support and guidance where needed. So looking at everything we've spoke about, looking at the things that we've talked about within the problems we have in open source, thinking about the reflection of the question I asked you earlier, because I said we'll need it at the end of this talk. Also, looking at the issues, the practical cases of what women are going through within open source, including my story as well. What then can we all do? Project maintainers, contributors, everyone seated here today that is either going to take on an open source contribution tomorrow or you're already in one. Engage with and amplify the work of women contribution in open source. Talk about it. Post about it. Somebody have done something really different. Applaud the fellow or applaud her for what she has done. We need more initiative. We need more diversity initiative. We need more initiative like outreach. We need more initiative that is geared towards women, right? Advocate. Talk about diversity. It's a problem. It's not something that you need to have passion about. It's a problem that we are trying to solve, and we all have to do it together. One of the ways I'm taking action right now, which is something I started last month, is through storytelling. Currently, I am speaking with leading women within open source, hearing their story and sharing them on different platforms. So if you go to Open Source Stories with Regina, you would find the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple as well for free. And you could listen to practical experiences of women that are now doing great works within open source and how they got their role. You will be amazed that we have a whole lot of situation ahead of us. Someone said, who is a socialist, he said that to design technology that works for everyone, we need to first understand who the technology is currently living out and recognize the difference isn't the problem. Living out difference is the problem. In this case, Who are we leaving out in the open source project, in open source community? We are unconsciously and intentionally, I use the word intentionally for those people that would not want to see a woman thrive within open source. We are unconsciously leaving these people out of the design of open source solutions and open source projects. As I know that I have a lot of developers here today, and I was thinking about how do I relate this problem in a way that it goes back to home. Think of the phrase, your code is broken. One of the first things you will think about is errors and how you want to fix errors. But I want you to have a mind shift. Think with me in another perspective. In this case, we are talking about your code is broken. It speaks about the brokenness created by excluding women's perspective and contribution in the entire life cycle of software development within open source. What do we intend to create in the open source ecosystem? Now, going back to what we started with, again, I'm going to ask this question in a way that I will leave you to your thoughts and hope that you would go back and reflect on this and begin to take actionable steps. Have you given yourself the opportunity to thrive in the open source community where you're a contributor or a maintainer? Now you have more ideas of what is going on, and I'm sure you have more answers. Have you given minority groups the opportunity to thrive and make a significant impact within your open source project? You have your answers. You know where the minority groups are within the context of what we are talking about at the moment, women. These are resourceful links, and I hope that you've gotten a nice time with me today. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.